So I have to ask, I want to make sure I don't forget to ask this question. Did Joseph Bologne have like the equivalent of an 18th century rap battle with Mozart? Because I loved how that started, but I'm curious if that was real or if
He
that was
did.
for the
He
screen.
definitely did not. He
Oh,
definitely did not. That was purely fantasy.
Hey everyone, this is David Stark from Watch Your Pass. Today I'm talking to Stefani Robinson, the screenwriter and producer of Chevalier, which is coming to theaters on April 21st, 2023. We're going to talk to her right now, and while you're watching, if you could like and subscribe to this channel, that would be fantastic. Helps out a lot. Thank you. So thanks so much for joining me. This is Stefani Robinson, the screenwriter and producer of Chevalier, which comes to theaters on April 21st, 2023. It is a fascinating story about a little known but amazing figure in 18th century France. Has a great tone, it has great music, and it is just overall interesting story. So thanks so much for joining me. I can't wait to talk more about it.
Yeah, likewise.
Awesome. So I have to ask, I want to make sure I don't forget to ask this question. Did Joseph Bologne have like the equivalent of an 18th century rap battle with Mozart? Because I loved how that started, but I'm curious if that was real or if
He
that
did.
was for the
He
screen.
definitely did not. He
Oh,
definitely did not. That was purely fantasy. It was actually, and that is sort of like the cheeky, I think, fu, so to speak, to I think the people who over time have like consistently referred to Joseph as the Black Mozart, and that was sort of like a
ah.
way to address that and move past it and introduce like the flavor and the swagger of how amazing this person was. But it actually was inspired by allegedly the first time that Jimi Hendrix met Eric Clapton. Hendrix was at a Cream show and Clapton was playing, and Hendrix invited himself up on stage and essentially outplayed Clapton on guitar. So much so that Clapton stormed off the stage and, with shaking hands, lit a cigarette and said, "Who the fuck is that?" Essentially.
I see the parallels. I see the parallels. But that is also, like, an amazing thing about this story because I didn't know, like, given what this man did, that very well could have been something that he did. It felt like it had, like, his swagger and kind of his skill. He could have easily done that, and
Sure.
I would have believed it, so
Yeah. Sure, I agree.
and I also think he probably could have taken Mozart in both a violin battle and also just a regular battle because he seemed like an accomplished fighter as
Oh
well,
yeah,
so
no, yeah, there would have been no competition there.
yeah, exactly. So I guess the first question is, how did you find this story? Like, where did you learn about Joseph Bologna? And was it from a book? Was it from your own research? And how did you kind of like how did this come to you across your desk or come
Yeah,
across you?
so I learned about Joseph when I was maybe about 15 or 16 years old. I was in high school, and it was a book or something that my mom had given me, and it just kind of briefly mentioned him, but mentioned enough about him that I was like, "Oh my gosh, like how did like no one ever talk to me or teach me about this person?" And he's like, "How does not everyone know about him, and how come there haven't been like 20 movies made about this guy at this point?" So I mean, for me, it started back then. Like, I wouldn't call it an obsession, but it was just sort of like a curiosity and more of a like, gosh, like the more research I did over the years, from high school onwards, it really did feel to me like, this was like the Jimi Hendrix of pre-revolutionary France. Like, this was such an accomplished man. He was, I've heard him referred as like to as like the David Beckham of the time too, because he was such an accomplished fencer. Like, he was such a famous athlete as well, and it's crazy that he was both of those things in his lifetime, on top of being like an accomplished horseback rider, knew tons of languages. He taught Marie Antoinette music, like he was her music tutor. He, obviously went on to lead a regiment in the army and was, a war hero, so to speak. So he had all of these like truly amazing lives and little details in his life. Like I would read things over the years, like he, you know, there was an assassination attempt on him and five men cornered him and he was able to fight them all off with his sword because he was such an accomplished fencer. Or people used to say that he would tie his arm behind his back and go swimming in the Seine River. So he just sort of felt like a comic book character,
He
like a
does, yeah, no, definitely larger than life. It sounds like
100%. So that, I mean, it was those qualities like that I was like, if I ever get the opportunity, like whether it's me or someone else, like someone needs to make this movie, and if I'm lucky enough to be a part of it, I would love to help introduce him to the world, and luckily that has happened, and we're here talking about it now.
Well, now I just feel mediocre because I'm like barely cracking. He's like a super accomplished person. So thank you for that.
Of course, you're welcome.
Okay. But no, it's an amazing story. And I loved, like, I had never heard of him. And I, took classes on European history. I'm ashamed that like it never kind of made its way into my study. Like this is an amazing story. I'm really glad that it kind of like stuck in your head when you were young and kind of you built it along the way. I guess, you know, what other things did you kind of like have to flesh out from his story, or were there like conflicting things that you needed to kind of like rectify for the film? Because it sounds like there wasn't a ton of information about him, although it seems to be maybe scattered around.
Yeah, I mean, there was information on him. That's the thing. Like, it wasn't like he was some ghost, history ghost that everyone was like, we've heard about this guy, but we don't know anything about him. Like,
He's
he
like
was
20 feet tall and can like can
exactly,
fight five people off.
exactly. Like, he had a giant axe and was cutting down trees.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I mean, like, there was information out there, but I mean, I think I was struck by the fact that there was information. There was a lot of contradictory information. That was true. Like, there was so much about like, I think it's still probably unclear to this day, like when he learned the violin and who taught him. It just sort of like was like, okay, and one day he's in this academy and he's shredding at the violin, but there was no, there was not a lot of details as to what, why, how, how that came about, who taught him. Was it someone on the plantation where he grew up, or was it someone in Europe like that taught him when he actually was in Paris? It's sort of unclear. So there are like little details like that were like, we just don't know. But there's also details of his life too where they're from the point of view of other people around him. So like there are no, I mean, in my research, I don't know if there have been any, more recent discoveries now, but in my research early on, like there was no firsthand account of his life, like from his perspective of, whether it was letters or, or memos or anything like that, or diary entries. Like it was literally like, a teacher wrote about him, or a friend wrote about him, or here's a review from one of his early operas and this is what the queen had to say. And it was all sort of like, like sort of this outside perspective. So there was a lot of work to like dig into like, okay, well, if this outside part is true, we're picking up like on the truths from the outside, like what might be true for the interior, and taking, I think, liberties there to try to figure out what that might be.
Maybe he couldn't write. Maybe he could do all these other things, but he just couldn't write.
Maybe. Right.
That would
Oh
be the
my
ultimate
God, that
irony.
would be insane. Like he literally was so excellent in everything else that he did not have time to learn how to write.
Given everything else he's done, I believe it. Like he just seems like this person that could do whatever he
That's
wants.
really funny.
Uh, were there any like really interesting places you found information? I'm trying to. I'm picturing like a Da Vinci Code kind of thing where you're in like the basement of this library with a candle, like reading this old manuscript, or was it all fairly conventional research? Just you had to go all
Yeah,
out of
yeah,
places.
it was all fairly conventional. I did a few times like go to Paris and actually go to maybe concert halls or buildings that he probably played a lot of his music in, or the old haunts, so to speak, where he spent most of his time either writing music or hanging out with his composer friends. But in those actual structures, like I don't think there was anything there that was like additionally helpful other than just being there in those spaces. But yeah, it was pretty conventional in terms of the research.
The sacrifices you have to do for your art. Thank you for going to Paris and putting
God, it was
yourself
so
out.
hard. I had to go to Paris and have a croissant.
And he was immigrate, or his mother immigrated from the Caribbean. You probably had to go there too to make sure that you had her
I know
backstory
I should
down.
just go. You're absolutely right. I should make sure I go when the weather's super nice.
Yes, exactly. So there was so much information. Was there any like really interesting facts that didn't make it into the movie? Because there's only so much you can tell during a story. I'm just curious about some of the other crazy things that this man had
Yeah, I
done.
mean, like I had mentioned before, like to get his exercise swimming in the Seine with his arm tied behind his back is pretty insane, and was one of those things that was in the script for a long time. The practicalities of actually shooting that and getting Kelvin to swim in a rushing river with an arm tied behind his back proved to be a little too costly and difficult. But I think that I don't know, the stuff that didn't make it in was probably just all of these relationships that he had with like really eccentric people, and you sort of get a sense of that in the movie. Um, but he really had a really interesting group of people around him, like thinkers and revolutionaries and their ideas, and he was well traveled. And but at the same time, he surrounded himself with people who were completely walled off, like Marie Antoinette being a great example of that. Like she was
Yep.
quite literally living in a bubble, and he had relationships with her too. And it sort of seemed like that maybe he had some high-low relationships all over the place, and like, he was truly like a man of like Europe, like a man of Paris of the time, that he really sort of seemed like he straddled a lot of those different social circles. But that's like an incredibly, that's like another incredible movie in its own right, like each of these sort of peripheral characters and
Yep.
their crazy stories and how they relate to him.
Yeah, well, and the movie itself is just a fascinating journey already. So there isn't really much of a need for other crazy things to make us feel like less accomplished. So,
There you
but
go.
you all can check out Chevalier, which is coming to theaters on April 21st, 2023. It's a fascinating movie about a fascinating person. This is Stefani Robinson, the screenwriter and producer. Thank you so much for your time,
Thank
and
you.
and thank you for getting this story out there because, like I said, it is fascinating and something that I hadn't heard of before. So thank you so
I
much.
appreciate it. Thanks for watching.
That was Stefani Robinson, the screenwriter and producer of Chevalier, which is coming to theaters on April 21st, 2023. It's a fascinating story about a little known but brave French figure. It was fun to watch and had some great music. If you liked this interview, please like and subscribe to this channel. It helps me out a lot. Make sure all my new content goes straight to you. Thank you.